My brother Gavin, who was 7 or 8 years younger than me, was abused as an altar boy at St Patrick's Cathedral by the Monsignor who looked after the altar boys and the choir at the cathedral. For years the family did not understand why Gavin was a severe alcoholic and extremely unhappy with his life and provided very difficult relationships with the family and all friends. Gavin essentially drank himself to death at the age of 52. He had been forced to retire from his professional teaching career at 50 after the alcoholism became uncontrollable. Later, in the very end of his life, he approached the Melbourne Archdiocese for support once the Archdiocese began to respond to abuse cases. He received minimal support and in fact despaired completely, saying as almost the last words of his life, "They didn't care. I want all this to go public." Those were said to him half a day before he died. And I sat with him for the last 3 days of his life, holding his hand and weeping at the pain that he was going through. Over the last few years, I've had wonderful support from In Good Faith Associates, which is now transformed into In Good Faith Foundation. That has included walking alongside me and the rest of my family in the pain that we have now after Gavin's death. We have a better understanding of some of the processes that happened to Gavin and to ourselves throughout his life and at the end of his life and in the aftermath in our dealings with the Archdiocese. That help has been absolutely marvellous. Together we are overcoming the evil of what has happened to our families.
Well, my name's Shaun Cole, and my wife Vivian was abused as a child, well, 19-year-old. She passed away in June last year because of addiction to alcohol and prescription drugs, which had been overused for many years, and it all stemmed from abuse from a priest called Father Barry King at Holy Family Church in Frankston. Now this priest, sadistic abuse occurred at her home at the presbytery, and it also occurred in cars all around the area while she was involved with the church. She opened up to me about it, and around about the same time there was a lot of publicity in relation to sexual abuse within the church and what was then became known as the Melbourne response. And the Commissioner O'Callaghan recommended that because of the horrendous nature of the abuse and the fact that the priest involved, Father Barry King, had admitted that sexual intercourse took place but claimed it was all consensual and denied any of the sadistic portions of it, recommended that Vivian be paid the maximum amount at that stage of the compensation that was paid. Under that compensation deal, it was no further claims could be made, and the payout was $50,000. It didn't stop the migraines, and it didn't stop the taking of tablets, and it didn't stop the drinking, and the response was really got it wasn't just the impression, the response was, here's the money, that's enough, shut up and leave us alone, go away, don't want to know any more about it. What Vivian's long-term use of opioids and alcohol, that gave her cirrhosis of the liver, which claimed her life in June last year. As a result of the migraines, my kids thought a normal family just had to put up with Mum not being able to go anywhere. So, yeah.
It's okay. It's fine. Good. Good to cry.
We couldn't go on holidays. Very rarely went on holidays. Vivian just couldn't handle it with her migraines, and she'd be in bed for days at a time. And I believe this all stemmed from a suppressed memory of her abuse when she was 19. It went for over 2 years. The family just wasn't... We just didn't do things that families did. And it just has affected everyone, even to the stage that my eldest son, who was baptised by this priest, has decided he doesn't want to be a member of the Catholic Church, and he's asked to be struck from the records of the church where he was baptised, and has no faith, no religion, and my other two children feel the same. We're in a way, it was a relief actually when Vivian died, because she was no longer in any pain and was her memories were gone, and she could remember just the good times. Now, the In Good Faith Foundation has been fantastic. I wanted to either create a foundation or donate to one if there was one around at Vivian's funeral. So in lieu of flowers, we asked for donations. We found In Good Faith via the internet, and they've been fantastic. I believe I'd like to see better justice, and that's something that not just for me and my family, but for all victims. And by supporting In Good Faith, well, that's something that I can sort of hang my hat on and say, yep, while we can find get justice for people, that's the way we're going to do it.
My name's Pam Christic. I was a teacher, a Catholic school teacher. Really believed in my vocation as a Catholic teacher. Worked in Healesville at the Catholic primary school there for nearly 20 years. And things started to change in 2000 when we were devastated to read in the newspaper that a priest who had left in 1994 had been convicted of abusing members of his own family and one of our past students who had been an altar server for David Daniel. He was convicted of sexual assault of children, and that was when I realised he'd been exposed to probably more than 50 students. During the time between 2000 and 2006, I'd spoken to numerous priests and principals, people within the Education Office and the Archdiocese about my concerns about the outreach to the students who might have been harmed. But nothing was done. In 2006, a new priest came, And this time I recognised all the classic signs of grooming that I had unfortunately missed with the first priest. And it all came to a head when we went on camp. And there on camp I spoke with the other teachers and did what I could to make sure he couldn't be alone with children. But of course at night I just couldn't sleep and I was beside myself. For days I just paced and I had a complete breakdown. And I lost my career over it. I was never able to go back because they didn't share my concern about this man. Eventually, unfortunately, a victim came forward and Paul Pavlou was convicted of the child sexual assault. I was in a really bad way. I was in a terribly bad way. The victim's mother was told not to talk to me and I didn't know who to turn to, and I'm just so grateful that I found In Good Faith. They were my saviour. A lot of things have happened over the last 10 years, but I believe a lot of the changes that have come about are because of all that Helen's work, all of In Good Faith's work behind the scenes that a lot of people don't realise how much work has been done. I'm very, very grateful to In Good Faith. I don't know what would have happened to me if I hadn't found them.
In 1985, I was at a Christian Brothers school, went on a retreat to get organised for the following year 12, and a priest on that retreat sexually abused me twice, once orally and the other anally. Basically, 17, I had my heart set on being a school teacher. Reports were great. In May, the reports were, he can't concentrate, he's going to waste a year, seems angry, missing class, playing up, completely unlike him. Thoughts of suicide at 17, no one would believe you. Catholic mum, dad, major Catholics, idolised priests, mum still does. It just put shadows, I think, basically just shadows over your life. 1993, I was about 92, about 24, 25. I looked at the priesthood, being single, being a good Catholic, and I went and saw two priests, and I was introduced to a guy called Brendan Davey, who sent me for a psychologist's report, to a guy called Ronald Conway. He did all the psychological tests for the priesthood. I then went back to Davey, and my abuser was there. I then became reasonably ill and had to go to a guy called Bishop Mulcairns. I went to Bishop Mulcairns and he asked me about joining the priesthood. I replied no. The guy that I thought had gone long ago was still touching young guys at a school that I saw, and it disturbed me greatly. I told him exactly, he wrote everything down and told me not to go to the police, leave it with me. Now, I did that, I trusted him. Years later, I learnt that a boy in Ararat had committed suicide from being abused by the same perpetrator that abused me. I've carried that and blamed myself for that for years, simply because I didn't go to the police and that kid never had the chance he probably deserved. It's hard to explain how you feel guilt, and I have since met the mother, and I've talked to him on the phone, and I have met her and apologised, and not only did I ball crying, but so did she. And of course, going through the Royal Commission, I learnt, I was lucky, a friend of mine introduced me to In Good Faith Foundation, and I've had fantastic support, and I wouldn't have been able to go to the Royal Commission, I don't think, without Claire and Helen's help and Paul Holdway. I didn't realise that I always thought I was depressed, and I've been getting on tablets for depression. However, since going to a psychologist and a CASA, and through all the processes, apparently I had PSTD, post-traumatic stress, whatever that is, post-traumatic stress, and I have never been diagnosed for that, and everybody else just said, oh, well, you're feeling crook, take depression tablets, you'll be right. they don't work. I don't believe in this no more silence, because it just doesn't fit with me. But keeping secrets hurt you. It really does. And like in good faith, that this has really helped. Like come out, there's no way that I'd be sitting here without their help, because they've helped me get my secrets off my chest, and it's a big step.